Hi guys, how are you today? After a hard working day, let's relax with this journey through history. We will travel back to the Middle Ages, a time filled with knighthood, chivalry and struggles, both noble and grim. Imagine, if you will, a small village nestled deep in the countryside. The landscape is blanketed in a layer of soft snow, and the air carries a crisp, quiet chill. The world seems still, almost as if time itself has slowed down. Winter has firmly taken hold, and the days are shorter, the nights longer. The sun, when it does shine, is weak and distant. It is during these cold months that life feels particularly simple, and yet more difficult. For the people who lived in this time, survival through the winter was a constant challenge. But even so, each day they rose and tended to their daily chores with patience, their lives intertwined with the natural world around them. The cold brought with it a certain stillness, and within this stillness, food, simple and humble, held the key to survival. As you sit back and listen, imagine the life of a peasant in the middle of a medieval winter. The landscape has changed, and so too has the rhythm of life. The harvest is long gone, the last of the summer's produce stored away, and now, in the coldest of days, the meals that sustain them are far fewer in variety. Every scrap of food is important, every morsel counted. The warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth is the only solace against the biting cold. The daily task of preparing food becomes a careful ritual. What a peasant ate during these days, often with a quiet sense of necessity, was not about variety or indulgence, but about endurance. What little could be preserved, stored, or gathered in the sparse winter months had to last. This is not a story of grand feasts or elaborate meals, but a quiet reflection on the simplicity of food, the rhythm of winter, and the slow passage of time. In this peaceful village, where each moment moves gently, the food of winter is simple, often plain, sometimes hearty, but always essential. It is a reminder that even in the coldest of days, there is life, even in its most unassuming form. If you're as excited as we are to dive into this captivating journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more adventures into the past. Let's uncover the mysteries of the Middle Ages together. Hit that bell icon too, so you're always first in line for the next historical adventure. So settle in, fluff your pillow, maybe light a candle. Let's dim the lights and take a deep, relaxing breath. In the medieval world, food was not something to be taken for granted. It was a constant companion, a necessary part of every day, and yet it was often far from abundant. The role of food in the life of a peasant was both simple and complex, shaped by the land, the seasons, and the harsh realities of life. It was not about indulgence or variety, but about sustenance. Food was survival. For the peasant, the cold days of winter brought with them the need to make use of everything that had been gathered and preserved in the warmer months. The rhythm of food preparation and consumption was deeply tied to the land and the seasons. In the summer, the fields were filled with crops, wheat, barley, oats, and rye. These were the mainstays of the peasant's diet, but their ability to last through the winter depended on the harvest, and even then, there were never quite enough. Much of the food that could not be eaten immediately had to be preserved. Preservation was not an option, but a necessity. Salt was one of the most valuable resources a peasant could have, for it was used to cure meats and fish, extending their shelf life. Salted pork, bacon, and fish, when available, would be stored in cool, dry places, to be used in the months when fresh supplies were scarce. The preservation of food was an act of foresight, a way to ensure that, in the darkest days of winter, there would still be something to eat. The need to preserve food was not just about the immediate present. The work of preservation was a way of holding on to the past, of remembering the abundance of summer and autumn, and preparing for the leaner months ahead. Even the act of salting meat was something done with a slow, deliberate pace. The peasant would take care to make sure every piece was properly salted, stored away with the knowledge that it would feed them through the cold months when food was more scarce. The grain harvest, too, had to be carefully stored. Grain was ground into flour, which could be used to make bread, porridge, and other simple dishes. But the flour, like the preserved meats, was not without its limitations. Once the stores ran low, a peasant would have to rely on what could be found in the fields or forests. Wild herbs, berries and roots that had been gathered in the warmer months. These additions, though small, could add a touch of flavor and variety to an otherwise monotonous diet. The peasants also knew which plants could be foraged during winter, their knowledge of the land offering a means of supplementing their stores. Vegetables, too, were an essential part of the medieval diet. Root vegetables like turnips, carrots, and onions were hardy enough to survive the winter, and they could be stored in cool cellars or buried in the earth to prevent freezing. Cabbage, leeks, and other leafy greens could also be found in the winter, though their availability depended on the region and the severity of the cold. These vegetables, often boiled or stewed, would provide much-needed nutrients in a time when fresh produce was scarce. Though not as rich in variety as the summer harvest, these vegetables were filling and nourishing, and they became a reliable source of food during the months when few other options were available. But it was not just the food that mattered. It was the way the food was prepared, the way it was cooked, and the way it was shared. Meals were not elaborate feasts, but simple gatherings around a pot or a fire. The act of cooking and sharing a meal was an important part of the daily life of a peasant. It was a time for quiet conversation, a chance to rest and recharge after a long day's work. Meals were often eaten in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because the work of the day had drained the body and the food provided a moment of rest. There was a slow rhythm to the preparation of meals, one that mirrored the slower pace of life during the winter months. The peasant would start their fire early in the morning, the smoke rising gently from the hearth, filling the cottage with warmth. The preparation of food was a deliberate act. It took time to grind the grain, to peel and chop the vegetables, to boil the water. There were no shortcuts, no fast meals. Every step was part of the process, part of the day's work. Even the cooking itself was a slow, patient affair. Stews would simmer for hours, the heat gradually bringing out the flavors. Porridge would be stirred gently, with care, and eaten slowly, with no rush. In the cold months of winter, there was also the practice of keeping the kitchen warm with the fires that were constantly tended. The heat of the fire would be shared by the entire family, providing comfort against the cold while meals cooked slowly. Often, a single pot would be used for multiple meals, simmering throughout the day as the family added bits of meat, vegetable, or leftover food to make the next meal. Waste was minimal, and every part of the meal was considered valuable. The rhythm of daily life was slow, much like the rhythm of food preparation. There were no quick fixes, no fast meals. Every meal was a result of careful planning and hard work. The process of grinding grain, boiling vegetables, or cooking meat was slow and methodical. It was a rhythm that allowed for reflection, for quiet moments of rest, and for the realization that every bite taken was earned. Even in the coldest of days, the rhythm of food continued. The need to eat, to nourish the body, remained constant. It did not matter if the world outside was covered in snow or ice, or if the days were short and the nights long. The need for food was a steady, unbroken rhythm that did not change with the seasons. Whether it was the first meal of the day, the midday meal, or the evening meal, the act of eating was an integral part of life. It is important to remember that food in the medieval world was not something that could be easily replaced. There were no supermarkets or convenience stores to provide a quick fix when supplies ran low. Every meal had to be carefully considered, every ingredient measured. There was no waste. Nothing could be thrown away. Leftovers from one meal would be used in the next, ensuring that nothing was wasted. The peasant's diet was modest, but it was efficient. Every scrap of food had a purpose. Every part of the meal contributed to the whole. This efficiency in preparation was a result of necessity, a necessity born from the constant struggle for survival in a world where food could not be taken for granted. In the cold months of winter, food was more than just a necessity. It was a connection to the past, to the harvests of summer, and to the work that had gone into preserving and storing food for the leaner months. It was a reminder of the passage of time, of the cycles of life, and of the quiet resilience of the human spirit. The food that a peasant ate in the winter was a reflection of their life, a life marked by hard work, endurance, and patience. Every meal was a continuation of this cycle, a cycle that would soon give way to the promise of spring, when new crops would be sown and the land would once again provide. As the days shortened and the cold deepened, The food that sustained the peasant was not just nourishment for the body, but also for the soul. Each meal, no matter how simple, was a reminder of what had been endured, of what had been accomplished, and of what would come again when spring returned. And so, even in the coldest days, food provided warmth, not just to the body, but to the heart. The morning light is faint, barely creeping through the frost-covered windows. It is a quiet morning, the kind where the world seems to hold its breath before the day truly begins. The air is cold and the ground is still, untouched by the footsteps of the day ahead. The crackling of a low fire fills the room, its warmth slowly spreading throughout the small cottage, offering comfort against the chill outside. In this stillness, the day begins for the medieval peasant. It is not the rush of modern mornings, with clocks ticking and alarms sounding. No, the start of the day is slow and deliberate. The first stirrings are gentle, no hurry, no need to rush. The warmth of the fire is the first invitation to move, to rise from the bed, where blankets are thick and heavy, holding warmth from the night before. The peasant stretches, their body stiff from the cold, but the fire promises the relief of warmth. The hearth is tended to quietly, the fire's glow soft and steady. The warmth from the flames is enough to coax the body into movement. There is no great sense of urgency. The world outside is still, and so the pace of the morning reflects this tranquility. The first task of the day is often the same, preparing food. The peasant knows that to get through the long, cold hours ahead, a warm meal must be ready. The smell of the fire, the crackling of wood, and the faint scent of herbs in the air set the stage for the day's first nourishment. The morning meal is simple. In the cold winter months, there is no abundance of fresh fruit or vegetables, and the variety of foods that could be found in warmer months is now but a memory. But there is something grounding in the simplicity of this first meal. It is not about indulgence or variety, but about sustenance, about keeping the body steady through the cold hours of the day. The choice for breakfast is usually a warm porridge, made from grains such as oats or barley. This humble dish, though plain, is nourishing. The grain, perhaps ground the previous autumn and stored carefully in the cool months, is boiled with water or, if available, milk. The fire keeps the kettle warm and the steam rises, filling the air with a gentle aroma. In the early hours, the porridge is thick and hearty, just the right consistency to fill the stomach and provide energy for the morning's work. The peasant stirs the pot slowly, carefully. There is no rush here, no need to hurry. The grains soften with time, and the slow stirring brings with it a sense of calm, a moment to pause before the day's work begins. When the porridge is ready, it is served simply. There is no ceremony in the act. It is a quiet, practical meal, often eaten in solitude or shared with a small group. If there is honey or dried fruit, perhaps from a summer harvest stored away, these will be added to the porridge, giving it a sweetness that contrasts with the otherwise plain meal. But these additions are rare. Often, the porridge is eaten as it is, warm, filling, and steady. Sometimes there may be a small piece of bread left over from the previous day, crusty and dense. The bread, made from rye or barley, is a staple of the peasant's diet, and though it is not always fresh, it is still nourishing. The bread is torn in chunks, dipped into the porridge to soften, and eaten slowly, savouring each bite. If there is any butter or cheese left, it might be spread thinly on the bread, adding richness to the meal. But again, these are luxuries, not always available. The morning meal is quiet. There are no loud sounds or hurried movements. The fire crackles gently in the hearth, and the peasant eats in peace, taking the time to appreciate the warmth that food brings. The meal is not about flavour or variety, but about keeping the body well and prepared for the tasks of the day. It is, in its own way, a simple act of care. Outside, the world is still covered in snow, the ground frozen hard beneath the thin layer of frost. The cold, though sharp, does not reach the warmth of the cottage, at least not yet. The warmth from the fire and the food inside are enough to keep the peasant comfortable for now. The world outside is distant, muffled, as if the cold itself has quieted the world. Once the meal is finished, the peasant takes a moment to rest. There is no rush to leave the warmth of the fire. The world outside can wait a little longer. The fire continues to crackle softly, and the peasant sits for a while, perhaps lost in thought, perhaps simply enjoying the quiet of the morning. There is no pressure, no urgency to the day. The pace is slow, measured. Every action is deliberate. When the time comes to move on with the day, there are always the chores to do, tending to animals, repairing tools, and preparing for the next meal. But for now, the morning lingers, slow and steady. The fire continues to warm the room, and the peasant, content with the simplicity of the moment, finishes their meal. The cold morning does not demand anything of the peasant beyond what is necessary. There is no hurry to face the day. The day's work will come soon enough, but for now, the rhythm of the morning is slow, unhurried. It is the beginning of another day in the long, quiet winter. The meal is over, but the stillness remains. The porridge has been eaten, the bread torn, and the warmth of the fire has been enjoyed. The peasant's body is ready for the tasks ahead, and the day can now move at its own pace, in the same slow rhythm as the morning. As the day unfolds, there will be more to do, more food to prepare, more work to complete. But for now, the morning, with its simplicity and calm, sets the tone for what is to come. As the day progresses, the morning stillness begins to give way to the quiet tasks of midday. The sun, though still weak in the winter sky, has climbed higher, its rays casting long shadows over the snow-covered ground. The air is cold, but not as sharp as it was in the early hours, and the world outside seems to have settled into a slow, steady rhythm. In the warmth of the cottage, the morning's work is coming to an end. The fire still crackles in the hearth, though it is now a bit lower, its heat more gentle than before. The day has not yet reached its fullest, and yet, for the peasant, the midday meal is already approaching. The morning may have been quiet and simple, but the midday meal, though still humble, carries with it a shift. It is the time when the body has worked, and the need for sustenance becomes more pressing. The midday meal is often the largest of the day. It is not a grand feast, but it is a time to fill the stomach in preparation for the remaining hours of work. The peasant's body, having laboured through the morning, requires something more substantial. The slow rhythm of life continues, but there is now an acknowledgement of the need for nourishment. It is not about indulgence, but practicality, a time to eat and restore energy before the afternoon's tasks. Bread, the staple of the medieval diet, is often at the centre of the midday meal. The bread, made from rye or barley, is dense and dark. It has been baked slowly, often over a fire or in a hearth. The texture is rough, not soft like the bread of modern times, but it is filling, satisfying in its own way. A slice of bread is torn, perhaps dipped into the broth or stew of the day, the flavours absorbed into the dense, chewy crumb. At this point, the bread may be paired with a simple soup or stew. The pot, still sitting on the fire from earlier in the day, is now a slow, simmering mass of vegetables, meat, and herbs. There is no rush. The stew has been left to cook, the flavours blending together with time. If meat was available, perhaps salted pork, a bit of fish, or the last of the preserved game from the fall, it will be added to the pot. But meat is not always an option, and so the vegetables, root vegetables like carrots, turnips, and onions, make up the bulk of the meal. These vegetables, hardy enough to withstand the winter's chill, have been slow cooked in the pot, their flavours rich and warming. The stew, once ready, is ladled into a bowl, and the bread is torn into pieces, dropped into the warm liquid. This dish, simple and humble, becomes the heart of the meal. It is a comfort in its warmth, a steady rhythm that matches the pace of the day. The warmth of the broth, the soft texture of the bread as it soaks up the liquid, the quiet satisfaction of the meal. It is a moment to pause, to rest, to renew. In the winter months, there may be a small amount of cheese to accompany the bread. The cheese is often hard and crumbly, made from milk that was preserved before the cold weather set in. Though it may be modest in quantity, it adds richness to the meal, a small luxury in a world of simplicity. The cheese is eaten slowly, with small bites, savouring each crumb, savouring the act of eating.
If the peasant is fortunate enough, there may also be a bit of preserved fruit, dried from the summer's harvest. Apples, pears, and berries, carefully dried and stored in a cool, dry place, add a touch of sweetness to the meal. These small pieces of fruit offer a reminder of the warmth of the seasons past, the bounty of the earth when the days were longer, the nights warmer. But these fruits are a rare treat, often saved for the midday meal when the body is in need of more substantial nourishment. The midday meal is taken slowly. There is no hurry to finish. no need to rush through it. It is a time to rest, a time to reflect. The peasant, having worked in the morning, takes this moment to sit, to eat, and to regain strength. The warmth of the meal fills the body, and the rhythm of life continues. The fire continues to crackle in the hearth, its warmth wrapping around the room, as the peasant chews slowly, savoring the food. There is no hurry to finish. The meal lasts for as long as it is needed. Outside, the world remains still. The wind, gentle and cold, moves the snow slightly, but there is no great movement in the landscape. The trees stand bare against the sky, their branches etched in the white. The day, though progressing, remains quiet. There is no sense of urgency in the world outside, and so there is no sense of urgency in the cottage. Time moves slowly, and the midday meal becomes a gentle, comforting part of this slow rhythm. After the meal is finished, the peasant lingers for a moment, enjoying the quiet peace that comes with a full stomach. The fire continues to burn softly, its heat filling the room. There is no rush to clean up, no need to hurry into the next task. The midday meal has been taken, and now there is a moment to rest. The body is nourished, the mind settled, and the day can continue at its own pace. It is important to remember that, in the medieval world, there were no grand distractions, no fast meals, no modern conveniences to take the place of simple nourishment. Every meal, even one as humble as this, was a quiet reflection of the life being lived. The food, though plain, was a gift of the earth, a gift that had been carefully preserved, carefully prepared. The simple act of sitting down to eat was not just a physical necessity, was a reminder of the passage of time, of the cycles of nature, and of the enduring strength of the people who lived through it. The midday meal, though it may seem simple and routine, carries with it a deeper meaning. It is a moment of rest, a moment of sustenance, a moment of quiet reflection. It is a break from the work of the day, a time to reconnect with the slow rhythm of life. It is, in many ways, the heart of the day. And as the peasant finishes their meal, the warmth of the fire still embracing the room, there is a gentle sense of peace, knowing that the body has been nourished, and the rhythm of the day can continue. As the sun dips lower in the sky, casting a pale light over the snow-covered landscape, the quiet of the evening begins to settle in. The cold of the day lingers, but there is a stillness that accompanies the onset of night. The fire in the hearth flickers softly, its warmth a welcome comfort in the growing chill of the evening air. Outside, the world grows darker, the bare trees standing silent against the dusk. As the peasant returns to the warmth of their cottage, the evening is a time of quiet closure. It is the moment when the day's work has been completed, and the body, having been sustained by the midday meal, begins to relax into the slower rhythm of the evening. The light of day fades, but the fire's gentle glow keeps the room warm and inviting. The evening meal, like the others before it, is not about indulgence, but about comfort and nourishment, about replenishing the body with the energy it needs to rest through the night. Unlike the midday meal, the evening meal is typically smaller. The day has been long, and the body does not require as much fuel as it did earlier. The evening meal is a time for reflection, for slowing down, for a quiet return to the warmth of the home. It is a simple affair, often more of a continuation of the midday meal than something entirely new. The same pot of stew or pottage, simmering softly over the fire, will often be reheated, with a few new additions or changes. The food is familiar, comforting, a gentle repetition of the nourishment that has sustained the peasant throughout the day. The meal itself is usually a simple, hearty dish, perhaps a second helping of the stew or porridge from earlier, now slightly thicker and richer after hours of slow cooking. The ingredients, whether vegetables or meat, have softened, the flavors melding together over time. The warmth of the pot provides a quiet relief, offering not just physical sustenance, but a kind of quiet solace. The stew is eaten slowly, each bite a reminder of the work and care that went into preparing it, each mouthful bringing a small moment of comfort in the cold night. The bread, though perhaps not as fresh as it once was, still forms an important part of the evening meal. A slice of dark rye bread, perhaps slightly harder from the day's passage, is torn and dipped into the broth of the stew. The bread, soaked in the liquid, softens, its dense texture providing a grounding, solid presence to the meal. It is not something to be rushed through, but to be savored slowly as the day winds down. The slow pace of eating mirrors the slower pace of the evening, and each bite becomes a small meditation on the simple satisfaction of a meal. If there is cheese left over from earlier in the day, it will be enjoyed with the bread. The hard, crumbly texture of the cheese provides a sharp contrast to the softness of the bread, and it is eaten slowly, savoring its richness. This small addition to the meal, though modest, adds a touch of pleasure to the otherwise simple dish. In these quiet moments, when the fire is low and the room is warm, the peasant eats with a sense of contentment, not because the food is extravagant, but because it is enough to nourish, enough to satisfy. Perhaps, in the rarest of moments, there may be a small serving of fruit. Dried apples, pears, or berries preserved from the harvests of summer might be added to the evening meal. These dried fruits, though not as fresh as they once were, offer a sweet note to the otherwise savory meal. They are a reminder of the warmth and abundance of the seasons past, a small token of nature's bounty that lingers through the cold winter months. The fruit is eaten slowly, its sweetness offering a gentle contrast to the richness of the bread and stew. The evening meal, in its simplicity, offers a moment of peace. There is no rush to finish, no pressing need to move on to the next task. The work of the day has been done, and now it is time to slow down, to rest, and to nourish the body one last time before the night. The peasant eats quietly, often in solitude, or perhaps in the company of family or a loved one. There is little conversation during the meal. The quiet of the evening calls for reflection, for a slow winding down after a long day. The warmth of the fire, the steady rhythm of chewing, the soft light of the room all contribute to a sense of calm, a feeling of contentment. Once the meal is finished, there is no hurry to clean up or to prepare for the next task. The evening meal is not the end of the day, but rather a transition, a moment of rest before the night truly takes hold. The dishes are cleared, but the pace of the evening remains slow, unhurried. The fire burns gently, its warmth filling the room as the peasant settles into a comfortable chair, perhaps near the hearth, or near a window where they can watch the evening sky grow darker still. There is no need to rush. The day is done, and now it is time for quiet. The quiet of the evening, much like the quiet of the morning, offers a chance for rest. The work of the day, though not finished in a hurry, has been completed with care and attention. The body, nourished by the evening meal, now begins to settle into a peaceful state, ready for the rest of the night. The fire continues to crackle, the soft sounds of the wood burning offering a calming, rhythmic backdrop. There is no tension, no urgency. The day has passed, and now the peasant can rest. As the evening deepens, a quiet struggle lingers in the air. Though it is never loud, never urgent, it is a struggle known well by the peasant, a subtle tension that exists in the background of each day. The stores of food are not infinite, and as winter stretches on, the once abundant supplies begin to dwindle. It is a struggle of patience, of quiet endurance. The last of the preserved meats, the final handful of grain each must be used sparingly, carefully, until the first signs of spring begin to appear. But even as the stores grow smaller, there is a steady rhythm to the way food is used, prepared, and consumed. Nothing is wasted. Every scrap of food, every last morsel, is preserved for another day. In this silence, there is no complaint, no hurry. The peasant knows that this is part of the cycle, a part of life that must be accepted with patience. The cold will eventually fade, and with it, the scarcity, but until then, there is quiet resilience in each slow, deliberate meal. This struggle is not loud, nor is it dramatic. It is simply a part of the quiet passage of time, a reminder that even in the hardest of days, life moves on slowly, steadily, and with quiet perseverance. Thank you for joining us. Rest well, take care of your beautiful self, whatever that means to you, and until next time, good night.